What's up, BookTube? It's Monty. I'm back here today and we're going to go over what I read in the month of December. I feel like this is coming out a little late because it's now the second week of January, but that's just how timing works. Most of these titles I picked up from the library, so there will be a picture off to the side over here. I'll spend a little bit of time going over my thoughts, and if I remember, I will also leave links down below to all of my Goodreads reviews. I don't think any of these, take it back, one of these titles, I think two titles for sure have standalone videos, so I'll leave those linked up above in the cards. You can go check those out if you want to for more in-depth thoughts. And then the final book I have to talk about will be having a review going up this Wednesday. So if you're watching this as it's airing, you can look forward to that. If you're watching this after that, then that video might already be up. And if it is, you know, go check it out. So the first couple of books I read in the month of December were for the Tistheseasonathon, readathon, where instead of following the prompts, I just decided to read some Christmassy, smutty male-male romance that I was able to get through Hoopla. So all of these were very short. I think none of the ones I wound up actually finishing were over 100 pages, so they were very short. I don't have a lot of thoughts on most of them, so I'm gonna go through these rather quickly because I think I have a Tistheseasonathon wrap-up and like a Friday Reads video. The first title I read for that was Christmas Serendipity by Liam Livings. This is a UK set Christmas story. Basically our protagonist has recently broken up with his good-for-nothing boyfriend. His friend invites him over to spend Christmas with her. And there's like a small little get-together, and it's pretty much just like the genesis of his new relationship. It was very cute. It's like a 0 on the smut scale. There's an epilogue where it gets smutty, but other than that, it was very wholesome, it was very cute, and I would kind of recommend it, but also if you haven't read it, I don't think you're missing out on anything. Then I picked up The Night Before Christmas by Drew Hunt. This was again a rather short little novella wherein our protagonist comes across a man stuck in a suit of armor. He takes that person home, they get the armor off. Again, it was very wholesome. There was kind of a little bit more smutty action. It was a little more steamy, but overall not quite what I expected. I did think it was kind of cute though, so there's that. Then I read Santa Gets His Man by Julian Balfour. This is one of the steamier reads, but this one will also include some unnecessary yellow face. So basically our main character is a mall Santa, and he comes across a rather attractive person who's taking his nephew to see Santa Claus on Christmas or whatever. He winds up telling this man to come home with him. And after that initial scene, we find out that our mall Santa knew the uncle that he was talking to, and since they went to school together, he decides he needs to be in disguise. But basically he winds up putting on some like yellow face makeup to disguise himself and giving the uncle a massage that kind of goes past a massage, and then there's like a second round the next day. It was all very strange and a little bit unnecessary, so I can't recommend that you read this, but it was a thing that it exists. And then the last book I read for this project was Best Christmas Ever by Terry O'Reilly, who I think I'm going to read from again. This was by far and away the most smutty. So our main character is a college professor who is going home to visit his family for Christmas for the first time in a very long time. His partner, his longtime partner, had like recently passed away within a year of our story taking place, and on his way home he sees this young man walking on the side of the road, hitchhiking in the blizzard, and he feels compassion. And so he pulls over, he takes the person in, and he's like, oh my goodness, I know you. And then the snowstorm gets so bad that they veer off the highway and stumble upon a little a cabin in the woods where they proceed to have lots of sex with no lube and no condoms. And I was just like, I don't think this is enjoyable sex for either of you, but they have it. It was kind of cute at the end. They adopt a dog together. He takes the hitchhiker home with him, which I thought was kind of strange, just considering the fact that you had this longtime partner that you refused to go home with, but then you fuck this man in the cabin and you take him home immediately. But it was cute. It was a cute story. I did like Terry O'Reilly's writing style. Hoopla has a lot available from him, so I probably will be going back to sample some other things in the future. After that project ended, I picked up Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard, Book 1, The Sword of Summer. I really enjoyed this. This is one of them. This is one of the titles that I have a standalone review for, so you can find that linked up in the cards. I liked this. I did think it was a little strange. Magnus Chase is he's a Norse god. He's like a child of Frey, I believe. So the god of spring and like plants or something. I was paying attention, but like I didn't really care about Frey that much. He doesn't really play a huge part in the story. But Magnus Chase is a protagonist. He is Annabeth's cousin, which at the time that I filmed the review, I thought was like a little chaotic to me, that you have the Greek gods and the Norse gods existing in like the same universe. I know that in reality that they do. I understand that in reality there are people out there in the universe who still worship these deities, who still pray to them, who include them in their various religious practices. And so I didn't mean to come off as insensitive, but to me, in terms of like a narrative, like we're just gonna go with like a fictitious world, it felt a little strange to me, only because it felt like the Norse god kids got the better end of the deal compared to like the children of the Greek gods, because the children of the Greek gods are terrorized from like birth pretty much with monsters trying to kill them. If you're a Greek child, you know, before Percy showed up on the scene, if you made it to like 13, good for you, because they were dying left and right. The Romans out there, you know, they had their little camp, they had their little settlement, they were doing fine. But if you're a Greek kid, bitch, congratulations, you turned 14. But the Norse kids, they just don't seem to be ever recognized by their godly parent unless they die. And I thought that was kind of fucked up. So, I mean, I guess you get to live a nice, healthy life, but at the same time, I don't know. I think that the Norse kids definitely have the better end of the stick compared to everyone else in this multiverse. That aside, I enjoyed it. I think that Magnus was a great character. I do think that this series really solidified for me that, one, Rick Riordan should only ever write trilogies, because I think I'm going to appreciate this because it is just 3 books. But two, that I wish that he would mature his writing, because it did pull me out of the story a little bit that Magnus Chase was 16, but we were reading from like a middle grade perspective. And it's not that I think you can't handle the themes that I think Rick includes in his narratives, or that I think that it's not suitable for the audience. I think that it is. And I think that if Rick were to age up his characters to a young adult novel, I think that parents and readers who are discovering him now, you know, little middle grade children with the Trials of Apollo who are growing up with that, I think they could still follow him to a young adult novel. I don't think that he needs to include anything that he's not already including, but I think there's just something about the voice that is like dissonant. And it was kind of there with the Heroes of Olympus, but you could kind of go with it because, you know, you had read Percy when he was 13, and so now you're seeing him a little bit older, like you had that growth with him. But I think plunging into like a whole new series with Magnus at the center was a little bit jarring considering how old he is and where his story takes place in the grander scale. I know that the Trials of Apollo series is wrapping up this year. I don't know if he's gonna plan on having a 4th, you know, 5-book run in that world, but I hope also that he does something YA. I don't think he needs to make the jump to adult. I don't think that needs to happen for him, but I do think just jumping up a little bit, I think I would appreciate the stories just a tad bit more, but I'm also not the demo, so who knows? The man don't need to listen to me. He's successful enough. After that, I read A Study in Charlotte by Brittany Cavallaro, and I was really excited because I had read Hello Girls, and that made it onto my best books of 2019. So in my head, I thought that I really jived with Brittany Cavallaro's writing. And what I found here was just really a letdown. First off, I didn't appreciate that, so the story is basically Sherlock Holmes' descendant novel. So, and the conceit of the novel is that Sherlock Holmes and James Watson were real people who had all of the real events happen to them, and Jamie's great-great-grandfather, whatever, uncle, whoever his relationship is, John Watson really wrote these books. Some of the books, you know, he made up details for. Some of it is like the actual events. It's that kind of a thing. But what bothered me was Charlotte Holmes seemed to just be like a caricature of Sherlock, which didn't make sense to me in the sense that she was meant to be her own individual and not him. So I didn't think that anything related to her drug use was really handled well in the novel. I felt that the more backstory I got about Charlotte Holmes, the less her character seemed believable to me as a person. I was like, that's a lot of stuff to go through, and I don't really like it. But I could have set that aside and lived with it. What really bothered me is I think that Jamie Watson is the grossest male protagonist I've ever had to read about. And it was really, I think, hard for me because the story is told through his perspective. He's the person telling us the story. There were moments in the novel where Jamie was like capital N, capital G, nice guy. And I was very concerned that he was going to be an incel. Like, he was just the grossest person. There's a scene where a girl is like literally dying, right? Like, he and Charlotte are working to save the life of this girl who is dying. She has a fake jewel lodged in her throat, and he's holding her mouth open so Charlotte can like try to get it out of her airway. And he's like, this girl had a crush on me, and here I am with the pad of my thumb on her lip. That's probably what she thought was gonna happen tonight, but here she is dying. And I'm like, she's literally dying, Jamie. Now is not the time. Like, now is not the time for this. And I would have to go through my Goodreads comments, like, on my updates. That's my favorite thing about Goodreads, side note. I really love getting to update my pages. But they were just really, they rubbed me the wrong way, and it made, I hate Jamie Watson. And so I don't remember what I gave this overall, but I was really, really let down by that novel. And 10 out of 10, don't think I'm going to continue on with the series anytime soon. After that, I picked up Solway by Lupita Nyong'o. This was a children's book that she wrote. The illustrations in this were beautiful. I loved every second that I spent reading it. I do think the message of accepting yourself and overcoming colorism and just loving, you know, your dark skin for your dark skin is a really important thing. I think that I didn't expect the... I don't know. There's like a kind of a myth situation that happens in the story. I didn't really jive with it, but overall I think the story was really great and I do recommend it. It's very short. Like I said, it's a children's book, so you should be able to fly through it. After Solway, I picked up White Negroes, When Cornrows Were in Vogue and Other Thoughts on Cultural Appropriation by Lauren Michelle Jackson. This again made it onto my top books of the year. This is a very short nonfiction novel all about cultural appropriation using pop culture references. I thought it was really great. I don't think there was anything groundbreaking in it, but I do think that the provided examples were some I hadn't, you know, I was too young to care about at the time, not to partake in the things. So like that was nice to read about, but overall I think that nothing in it was like groundbreaking information for me, but I do think that it crystallized some things. I'm very much looking forward to someday picking up a copy for myself so I can reread it and annotate. I can't recommend it enough. If you're looking to get into more nonfiction things, it's great. It's also written by a Black woman. Black History Month is next month, so if you're looking for some new titles, you can two birds, one stone. Then I read Lady Midnight by Cassandra Clare. I have a whole discussion on this book, so I'm not going to get into it too much. I am currently in the middle, not even in the middle, I'm like 25, not even 25. I'm like 17-ish% of the way through the final book in this trilogy. And so far, I think that Lady Midnight is the strongest in terms of its standalone quality. I think that I still don't like it. Like I said, the reviews linked up above. I had a lot of issues with it. I still have those issues with this title. I don't think that is ever going to change for me. But overall, like I said, this is probably my favorite in the trilogy so far. But we'll see. We'll see how that shakes out. After Lady Midnight, I picked up The Secret of the Old Clock by Carolyn Carolyn Keene. I only picked this up because I started the CW Nancy Drew adaptation, and I was really enjoying it, and I kind of wanted to go back and read a Nancy Drew because the only entry point I had was like the 2007 movie, I want to say, with Emma Roberts, which again I appreciated, but I had never read a Nancy Drew novel. I think that I had expected The Secret of the Old Clock for Nancy to be an adult in this book, but she is 18. Which again is why I think it's really hard for me to criticize Rick Riordan for having a 16-year-old protagonist when Nancy Drew is out here being 18 in this. But I appreciated Nancy. I thought it was really great. It was very Nancy-centered. There weren't really a lot of side characters. It was just her and her father in this one. But overall, I thought there wasn't a murder? There wasn't a murder, but somebody was dead. I thought that the mystery around that was really good. I thought the solution was entertaining. I don't think I'm going to continue on with the Nancy Drew books, but I don't regret that I spent my time reading this one. After The Secret of the Old Clock, I picked up Bad Blood, Secrets and Lies in a Silicon Valley Startup by John Carreyrou. This could have also been on my top books of the year. Definitely a top 20 list. I listened to the audiobook because I had watched HBO's documentary on the same subject, The Inventor, earlier in the year. I've actually gone back and watched it a couple of times. But this story is just fucking crazy no matter how many times you take it in. I did like the audiobook. I think that even if I hadn't read the audiobook, I do think that the prose of the novel is written in a way that draws you in, that is very digestible. So again, if you're trying to read more nonfiction this year, I think this is a great place to start. The web of lies that Elizabeth Holmes was able to spin, the way that she was able to continually build upon this foundation of lies that once you start poking at it just completely falls apart, I think is fucking insane. And I was highly entertained the entire time. So, like I said, if you're looking for quality nonfiction, this is a great place to start, and I do recommend the audiobook. Then I picked up Children of Virtue and Vengeance by Tomi Adeyemi. I personally loved this sequel. At the time that I finished it, which was it was a while ago now. At the time that I finished it, there weren't a lot of people talking about it, and now I feel like there are. I've definitely seen conversations pop up. Most people do not seem to have appreciated this book as much as I did. I love it. I can see faults in it. I do think that there are characters that are flat. I do think that there is a heterosexual romance that is forced into this one that is different than the romance in the first one. But at the end of the day, I think that this just checked all of my boxes. It is my favorite book of 2019. And I don't know if the third book is still coming out this year. I don't think there's actually a release date on Goodreads anymore for it this year. But it's my most anticipated read of the year, which I think is kind of wild because it's a fantasy. So I really loved it. If you tend to like things that I like, I think you'll like it. But I understand that my reading taste is kind of all over the place, so that might be kind of hard to judge. I don't know. Then I read Brightly Burning by Alexa Dunn. And I've been a fan of Alexa Dunn's channel for a really long time. She's an author. She has a YouTube channel here on YouTube, obviously, where she discusses her publication journey, tips and tricks for aspiring writers, the ins and outs of traditional publishing. All around great resource, I think, for people who just like long-form content and people who are looking to be published traditionally. I think that she offers a lot of great advice. Now, her bookish opinions, so she also does some booktube content, like her opinions on certain books that I've read, we don't always align. And so her book, Brightly Burning, is a Jane Eyre retelling. I've never read Jane Eyre. I've now read 2 of them. I don't think Jane is on here. I also read a graphic novel version. It was whatever. But Brightly Burning is set in space. It's in the near future, far future. Earth is no longer inhabitable. There was like a supervolcano, there's an ice age. Somehow all of the world's countries were able to launch into space. There's a lot of suspension of disbelief you have to go through because this is very much a romance and not a sci-fi, even though I think it's billed as a sci-fi kind of, just because it's Jane Eyre in space. And I've never read Jane Eyre, so I didn't know what to expect other than the in-space part. But the in-space part, I think, is the least developed part. I think all the technology they use, all that is fine. But just the concept of their living in spaceships and they haven't colonized the planet, like the moon or even Mars, I think it doesn't make sense to me that they were able to launch all of these. Anyway, I didn't like this book. That's the real short of it. Didn't like it. I think that unlike in the graphic novel version of Jane Eyre I read that was, again, an adaptation, like, updated for the modern world, Alexa Dunn doesn't keep the weird age gap that is apparently in Jane Eyre. The love interest is much closer to our main character Stella's age, but it didn't work for me. So I didn't like how the book ended. I didn't like how the book began. It was all very weird. The middle of the book was really strong. There's a moment where, like, a romantic rival shows up, a romantic female interest shows up for our Hugo's, Stella's love interest name is Hugo, I think, and those dynamics were really good, but other than that, was not a fan. Could not recommend. The last book that I read in the month of December was Lord of Shadows by Cassandra Clare. I finished this on December 31st. I was determined to get this done. I also wanted to finish Queen of Air and Darkness on the 31st. That wasn't going to happen. But I finished Lord of Shadows. A standalone review is coming, like I said, on Wednesday. Just basic thoughts. I did not like this one. I do want to say, I've wanted to say this for so long. I don't understand why everyone hypes up Holly Black and her Fae, when I think that what Cassandra did here with the Fae storyline was by far and away the most interesting thing I've ever seen done with the Fae. Sorry, not sorry. I think that it was just better. I do still have an issue with characters and how certain characters were reintroduced to the group. I do not appreciate that aspect. I don't like I knew that this element was part of the trilogy, like that was kind of the thing, but this book doesn't really have an antagonist. It kind of sets one up for the third book, kind of. I think this book doesn't work for me because Lady Midnight is very much a standalone murder mystery novel in the Shadowhunter world, and so Lord of Shadows has to take that plot, continue it, and then set up something that is worth 3 books. And I think that because of that, and it's weird. It succeeds. It does the things that it sets out to do, and it does them well, but I didn't always enjoy the process because I could see the process. But I think that what really killed it was, I don't think the antagonist that the book sets up is really the thematic through line of the trilogy. I think the thematic through line is the thing I knew going in, and I don't think that works just in terms of how all the other series have played out with the Magister and Sebastian and Valentine. And there's, like I said, there is a manifestation, like a character who's like, you could slot into that, but I don't think that it's the same through line. I think that it's very much a different through line that I'll get into in my standalone review, where I will go into some spoilers. So that's everything that I read in the month of December. Let me know down in the comments section what you read in the month of December. We're in a new year, so if your December was whatever, then, you know, we can change that. If your December was like mine and kind of crazy, and you managed to get through a fuck ton of things, I hope that you can bring that same energy into the new year. So thanks for watching. If you liked what you saw here and you want to see more, make sure to click the subscribe button down below. And I'll see you guys again on Wednesday. But until then, and until next time, bye.